Little girl asks her millionaire father, "Would you sell me one day of your time?" His answer changes his life forever. Thunder rolled outside the towering glass windows of Anderson Enterprises' boardroom, where Michael Anderson stood facing the board of directors, his fingers wrapped tightly around an old penny in his pocket. The accusations hung heavy in the air. "Mr. Anderson, you've jeopardized millions in investments for a small bakery and baseless accusations against Silverstone Corp. This behavior is unacceptable." Chairman Roberts' voice cut through the tension. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, and for a moment, Michael saw a reflection in the window, not of himself in his tailored suit, but of a small girl sitting on a curb, her eyes full of hope as she held up a penny. 7-year-old Lily's words echoed in his mind, "Sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest wishes, Mr. Anderson." His grip on the penny tightened as he turned to face his accusers. "Gentlemen," he said firmly, "let me tell you a story about real value. Thank you for joining me in crafting this story. If you've enjoyed this emotional journey and would like to explore more heartfelt narratives that celebrate the triumph of human spirit, please consider subscribing to this channel. Together we can share more stories that remind us of the power of compassion and hope." Michael Anderson hadn't always been the cold, calculating CEO of Anderson Enterprises. 20 years ago, he was a passionate young man working at Hope Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to helping underprivileged communities. His office wasn't in a glass tower then, but in a modest building where people lined up each day seeking assistance. With unwavering idealism, he helped families secure housing, find employment, and rebuild their lives. The transformation began when Hope Foundation collapsed amid accusations of misappropriated funds. Though Michael was cleared of any wrongdoing, the scandal destroyed everything he'd built. He watched helplessly as families he'd helped were turned away, their hopes crushed. His marriage crumbled under the stress, leaving him alone in an empty apartment with nothing but his ideals in tatters. Determined never to be vulnerable again, Michael reinvented himself. He enrolled in business school, worked 18-hour days, and climbed the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency. Each promotion hardened him further, until the compassionate social worker became unrecognizable beneath the designer suits and cold business decisions. By 45, he'd built Anderson Enterprises into a real estate development powerhouse. His signature appeared on contracts worth millions, and his name inspired both fear and respect in boardrooms across the city. Instead of helping families find homes, he now specialized in acquiring struggling properties and transforming them into luxury developments. The local press dubbed him the Ice King of Real Estate, a nickname he privately embraced. Emotions were inefficient, he'd learned. Everything could and should be measured in dollars and cents. His former colleagues from Hope Foundation wouldn't have recognized the man who now calculated human lives as mere figures on a spreadsheet. His personal life reflected this transformation. He lived alone in a penthouse apartment, its minimalist design as stark as his worldview. Relationships were evaluated for their strategic value, and meetings were scheduled in 15-minute increments. The only reminder of his past was a small box buried in his desk drawer, containing his old Hope Foundation Idaho card, a reminder of what he considered his greatest failure. The annual shareholder meetings became his moment of triumph, where he presented ever-increasing profits with clinical precision. "Business is not charity" became his mantra, repeated so often that even he almost believed it had always been his truth. Each successful acquisition, each profitable quarter, validated his new philosophy. Yet there were nights, rare moments when the city lights flickered below his penthouse windows, when something stirred in his memory. The face of a single mother he'd helped secure her first apartment, the tears of joy from a family moving into their own home, the simple gratitude in a child's smile. These memories were unwelcome visitors he quickly dismissed, focusing instead on the next day's mergers and acquisitions. His executive assistant, Jennifer, had worked with him for 15 years and was perhaps the only person who occasionally glimpsed shadows of his former self. She kept a record of every charity invitation he declined, every community outreach program he dismissed, and every small business owner's plea he ignored. Sometimes she caught him staring at old newspaper clippings about Hope Foundation, though he always quickly turned away. The man who now stood in his corner office, overlooking a city he helped reshape, was a monument to calculated success. His tailored suits, silver hair, and steely gaze projected an image of unshakable authority. Every decision was justified by profit margins, every action governed by market analysis. He had become exactly what he once fought against, a man who saw the world as a collection of assets to be acquired, stripped and repurposed for maximum return. Sarah Thompson's world collapsed on a rainy Tuesday morning 3 years ago when her husband James didn't return from his construction shift at Silverstone Corp's new downtown development. The workplace accident investigation was swift, clinical, and suspiciously incomplete. After James's funeral, Sarah found herself alone with 7-year-old Lily and a stack of mounting bills. Their small apartment above Eddie's hardware store on Hope Street became both sanctuary and prison. Sarah worked 3 jobs: morning shifts at a local diner, afternoon cleaning at offices, and late-night data entry from home. The walls of their living room were covered with Lily's drawings, bright, hopeful scenes of a bakery she dreamed of opening with her mother, just as James had always encouraged. James's lucky penny became their most treasured possession. He'd found it on his first day working construction, heads up, and carried it through 15 years of hard work. The day before the accident, he'd given it to Lily, telling her it held all his dreams for her future. Now, Lily carried it everywhere, rubbing its worn surface whenever she missed her father. The community on Hope Street rallied around them in small ways. Mrs. Rodriguez from the laundromat watched Lily after school, teaching her Spanish between folding sheets. Mr. Chen from the corner store often slipped extra fruit into their grocery bags, claiming they were too ripe to sell anyway. These small kindnesses kept them afloat, barely. Sarah's dream of opening a bakery seemed increasingly distant. The recipes she'd inherited from her grandmother gathered dust in a box under her bed. Late at night, after Lily was asleep, she'd sometimes take them out, running her fingers over the handwritten cards, remembering weekends spent baking with James and Lily, their small kitchen filled with laughter and the scent of vanilla. Lily inherited her father's optimism and her mother's determination. Despite their circumstances, she maintained perfect attendance at school, proudly bringing home art projects and math tests to brighten their walls. She never complained when dinner was simple or when she had to wear hand-me-down clothes. Instead, she'd sit by their window, holding the penny, and tell stories about the wonderful things that would happen someday. The insurance money from James's accident barely covered 3 months' expenses. The settlement from Silverstone Corp came with a non-disclosure agreement that Sarah, desperate and overwhelmed, signed without fully understanding its implications. The sum seemed generous at first, but quickly dwindled under the weight of medical bills, funeral costs, and daily expenses. Their apartment, small as it was, became their fortress. Sarah transformed their tiny kitchen into a part-time bakery operation, selling cookies and cupcakes to neighbors when she could find the energy. Lily would sit at their scratched formica table, doing homework and watching her mother work, the lucky penny always within reach. The contrast between their life before and after James's death was stark. Photos of family vacations and holiday celebrations hung on their walls like windows into another world. Sarah kept James's work boots by the door, unable to move them, as if some part of her still expected to hear his heavy footsteps climbing the stairs after a long day's work. Each morning, Sarah would drop Lily at school, watching her daughter walk into the building with straight shoulders and determined steps, the penny safely tucked in her pocket. Then she'd rush to her first job, ignoring the growing pain in her back, the constant exhaustion, and the worry that gnawed at her every waking moment. But she never let Lily see her cry, saving those moments for late nights when the silence became too heavy to bear. Hope Street and the financial district existed in the same city but occupied different universes. From Michael Anderson's 45th floor office, Hope Street was just another red line on development maps, a neighborhood marked for urban renewal. From the ground, it was a vibrant community of family-owned businesses fighting to survive in the shadow of gleaming skyscrapers. The contrast was starkest at dawn. While baristas in the financial district prepared $7 lattes for executives, Mrs. Rodriguez unlocked her laundromat on Hope Street, welcoming night shift workers with $1.50 coffee from her ancient percolator. The morning light caught the glass towers first, leaving Hope Street in shadow until mid-morning, a daily reminder of the neighborhood's place in the city's hierarchy. Sarah's makeshift bakery operation embodied this divide. She baked in her tiny kitchen using second-hand equipment, selling homemade cookies for $1 each. 12 blocks away, the corporate cafeteria in Anderson Enterprises sold mass-produced pastries for 5 times that price. The difference wasn't in quality. Sarah's recipes had been perfected through generations, but in presentation and perception. The corporate world's influence crept steadily closer to Hope Street. For sale signs appeared with increasing frequency, and long-time businesses disappeared overnight. Real estate developers circled the neighborhood like well-dressed vultures, offering market-rate compensation. That somehow never seemed enough to start over elsewhere. Each closing shop left another hole in the community's fabric. Hope Street's residents watched the transformation of neighboring communities with growing anxiety. Where family grocers once stood, chain stores now dominated. Historic brownstones were demolished for luxury condominiums. The word gentrification echoed in community meetings, but solutions remained elusive against the tide of corporate money and political influence. In the financial district, success was measured in quarterly reports and stock prices. On Hope Street, it was counted in children fed, neighbors helped, and traditions preserved. While corporate lawyers drafted acquisition papers in air-conditioned offices, Hope Street's small business owners gathered in Eddie's hardware store after hours, sharing resources and strategies for survival. The newspaper headlines told 2 different stories. The business section celebrated another record quarter for Anderson Enterprises, while the local section reported on rising rents forcing out long-time residents. But Michael's photo appeared regularly in economic journals, while Sarah's community made news only when crime or protest disrupted the city's routine. Even the sounds were different. The financial district hummed with the quiet efficiency of climate control and soundproofed offices. Hope Street's soundtrack was a symphony of life children playing, street vendors calling, music drifting from open windows, and conversations in a dozen languages. One world was designed to minimize human interaction, the other thrived on it. These parallel universes occasionally intersected. Corporate employees would venture to Hope Street for authentic ethnic cuisine, treating the neighborhood like a quaint tourist destination. Meanwhile, Hope Street residents cleaned offices, delivered packages, and maintained the infrastructure that kept the corporate world running smoothly, invisible to the executives they served. The irony wasn't lost on either side. The financial district's wealth was built on promises of progress and prosperity, yet that prosperity seemed perpetually out of reach for communities like Hope Street. Each new development project promised jobs and opportunity, but somehow the benefits never quite trickled down to those who needed them most. The morning Michael Anderson's life change began like any other. His chauffeur navigated the sleek black Mercedes through downtown traffic, heading to a crucial meeting about a new development project. Michael barely glanced up from his tablet, reviewing acquisition figures, until the car shuddered to an unexpected stop on Hope Street. "Transmission problem, sir," the chauffeur apologized, already on the phone with a repair service. "It'll be at least 30 minutes." Michael checked his Patek Philippe watch, 8:27 a.m. The meeting was at 9. His jaw tightened as he stepped out of the car, Italian leather shoes meeting cracked concrete. The street was waking up around him. Shopkeepers unlocked metal gates, elderly residents shuffled to corner stores, and children walked to school in small groups. Michael felt conspicuously out of place in his $3,000 suit. He pulled out his phone to call for another car when something caught his eye. A small girl sat on the curb outside a worn apartment building, completely absorbed in something she held. She wore a faded blue dress, clearly hand-mended, but impeccably clean. What struck Michael wasn't her obvious poverty, he'd seen plenty of that in development zones, but her expression of absolute contentment. Perhaps it was the morning light, or the lingering ghost of his former self, but Michael found himself walking closer. The girl held a penny, turning it over and over and over in her small hands as if it were a precious gem. She spoke to it softly, making what seemed like wishes. "What makes that penny so special?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The girl looked up, and Michael was struck by the clarity in her eyes. No fear, no resentment of his obvious wealth, just pure, unguarded interest. "It's my daddy's lucky penny," she replied, her voice clear and confident. "He said it grants wishes if you believe hard enough." She held it up for him to see, sunlight catching its worn surface. "Would you like to make a wish, mister?" Something in her innocent offer cracked the defensive wall Michael had built over decades. He found himself kneeling down, designer pants against dirty concrete, to examine the penny. It was old, dating from the year he'd started at Hope Foundation. "I'm Lily," she continued, seemingly unaware of his internal struggle. "My daddy found this penny the day he got his construction job. He said finding it heads up meant good luck was coming." Her smile faltered slightly. "He gave it to me before he went to heaven." Michael's throat tightened. Images from workplace accident reports he'd reviewed flashed through his mind: statistics, liability assessments, settlement figures. But here was the human cost, sitting on a curb with her father's lucky penny. "What do you wish for, Lily?" he heard himself ask, his business voice replaced by something softer, almost forgotten. "I wish Mummy could open her bakery," Lily replied without hesitation. "She makes the best cookies in the world, but she's always too tired from her other jobs. I wish she could smile more, like in the pictures with Daddy." Before Michael could respond, a harried-looking woman emerged from the building. "Lily, you'll be late for school." She stopped short at the sight of Michael, her expression shifting from surprise to protective concern. "It's okay, Mummy. This nice man was just meeting my lucky penny," Lily called out, jumping up and brushing off her dress. She turned back to Michael. "Maybe it'll bring you luck too, mister." As Lily skipped to her mother's side, Michael stood slowly, his knees protesting the unfamiliar position. The repair van was arriving, but he barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the mother and daughter walking away, Lily's voice carrying back to him as she chattered about her penny's magic. His phone buzzed a message about the morning's meeting. Michael looked at the numbers on his screen, then at the retreating figures of Lily and her mother. For the first time in years, the figures seemed to lose their meaning. 3 days after the car breakdown, Michael found himself back on Hope Street, this time by choice. He'd spent those days distracted in meetings, Lily's words about her father's penny echoing in his mind. His efficient executive assistant, Jennifer, had already compiled a detailed report on Sarah and Lily Thompson's situation. Sarah Thompson worked 3 jobs: morning waitress at the Corner Cup Diner, afternoon cleaning service at various offices downtown, and evening data entry from home. Her husband, James Thompson, had died in a construction accident at a Silverstone Corp site 3 years ago. The settlement details were suspiciously sealed. Most telling was Sarah's rejected small business loan application's perfect payment history, but insufficient collateral. Michael watched from his parked car as Lily sat in her usual spot, penny in hand. This time she was carefully wrapping it in a small piece of cloth. Her movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. Before he could question his judgment, he stepped out of the car. "Hello again, Lily," he said, approaching carefully. She looked up with immediate recognition, her face brightening. "You came back." She held up the wrapped penny. "I was just protecting it. Mommy says precious things need extra care." Michael sat down beside her, his tailored suit against rough concrete again. "Tell me more about your mom's bakery dream," he found himself saying. Lily's eyes lit up as she unwrapped the penny. "Mummy has all these special recipes from Grandma. She used to bake every weekend with Daddy and me. People always said she should open a bakery." Her voice dropped slightly. "But now she's too busy and tired. She still bakes sometimes late at night when she thinks I'm sleeping." Sarah appeared at the building entrance, looking more worn than before. She froze at the sight of Michael, recognition and wariness crossing her face. "Mr. Anderson," she said surprisingly. "I looked you up after last time. CEO of Anderson Enterprises." Her voice carried a slight defensive edge. But Michael stood, brushing off his suit. "Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to discuss a business proposition." Sarah's face hardened. "We're not interested in selling our apartment." "Not buying," Michael clarified. "Investing. In your bakery." The silence that followed was broken only by Lily's sharp intake of breath. Sarah's expression cycled through confusion, suspicion, and cautious hope. "Why would you want to do that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely steady. Michael glanced at Lily, who was clutching her penny tightly. "Let's call it a lucky investment." Over coffee in their small kitchen, Sarah spread out her grandmother's recipes. Her hands trembled slightly as she showed Michael her business plan, carefully written in a notebook during late nights between jobs. "I've run the numbers countless times," Sarah explained. "With proper equipment and a small storefront, we could be profitable within a year. But no bank will take a chance on us." Michael studied the worn notebook pages, the meticulous calculations reminding him of his own early days. But it was the margin drawings that caught his eye, Lily's colorful illustrations of her mother smiling behind a bakery counter. "I have one condition," Michael said finally. Sarah tensed, but he continued, "The penny stays with the bakery. As a lucky charm." Lily, who had been quietly watching from her corner, suddenly spoke up. "But there's another wish that comes with it." Michael turned to her, curious. "What wish is that?" "You have to promise to visit," Lily said solemnly, "to make sure the penny's luck doesn't run out." Something between a laugh and a sob escaped Sarah's throat. Michael looked at them both, the tired but determined mother, the hopeful child with her precious penny, and felt the last bricks of his carefully constructed wall begin to crumble. "I promise," he said, the words carrying more weight than any business contract he'd ever signed. Michael's decision to fund Lucky Penny Bakery sent ripples through both worlds. In the financial district, rumors circulated about the Ice King's unexpected investment in a Hope Street bakery. His board members exchanged concerned looks during meetings, wondering if their CEO was having a midlife crisis. Jennifer, his executive assistant, watched with quiet satisfaction as Michael personally oversaw the bakery setup. She'd witnessed his transformation from passionate charity worker to cold businessman and recognized something of his old self returning in his careful attention to the project's details. The Hope Street community reacted with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Mr. Chen from the corner store stopped Sarah after work, warning her about corporate sharks in expensive suits. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to read cards to check Michael's intentions, while Eddie from the hardware store quietly began fixing up the old storefront Michael had purchased. Sarah threw herself into the preparations with determined energy. She gave notice at her cleaning jobs but kept the diner shift, refusing to be completely dependent on Michael's investment. Late into the night, she tested recipes in their small kitchen, with Lily dutifully recording the results in a new notebook. Michael found himself spending evenings at the developing bakery, his suit jacket draped over a chair, reviewing contractors' work and discussing business strategies with Sarah. Lily would sit nearby, doing homework and occasionally offering opinions on paint colors or cookie samples. "The community needs to feel ownership," Sarah explained one evening, kneading dough with practiced hands. "These people held us up after James died. I want them to know this is their bakery too." Michael watched her work, remembering similar conversations from his Hope Foundation days. What if we hired locally, he suggested. Train neighborhood youth, create real opportunities. The penny sat in a place of honor on the counter, wrapped in its cloth, except when Lily performed her daily luck-checking ritual. Michael caught himself glancing at it during difficult decisions, something that would have embarrassed him just weeks ago. The transformation of the storefront became a community project. Eddie recruited his nephews to help with repairs. Mrs. Rodriguez's granddaughter, an art student, painted a beautiful mural of penny bronze swirls on one wall. Mr. Chen advised on kitchen equipment suppliers from his restaurant industry connections. But not everyone celebrated. Michael's regular absences from afternoon meetings drew attention. Board member Richard Sterling, particularly, began asking pointed questions about resource allocation and return on investment. But a bakery, Michael Sterling cornered him after a meeting. This isn't like you. What's really going on in Hope Street? Michael straightened his tie, meeting Sterling's gaze. Sometimes, Richard, the best investments aren't about immediate returns. The night before the bakery's opening, Michael stood in the finished space alone. Moonlight filtered through the new windows, catching the penny in its display case. His reflection showed something he hadn't seen in years: uncertainty, yes, but also possibility. Sarah's recipe cards were neatly arranged in the kitchen. Lily's drawings decorated the staff room. Tomorrow, Hope Street would have its bakery, and two worlds would collide in ways he couldn't predict. Michael touched the display case gently. "Let's hope you really are lucky," he whispered to the penny, and for the first time in decades allowed himself to make a wish. Lucky Penny Bakery's opening day exceeded all expectations. The line stretched around the block, with Hope Street residents eagerly waiting to support Sarah's dream. The scent of fresh bread and warm cookies wafted through the neighborhood, drawing curious passers-by from nearby streets. Sarah moved through her new kitchen with growing confidence, her grandmother's recipes coming to life in professional ovens. The neighborhood youth she'd hired watched in awe as she demonstrated the perfect croissant fold, her years of late-night practice evident in every movement. Lily flitted between tables in her specially made Lucky Penny Junior Baker apron, proudly telling customers about her mother's secret recipes. Michael arrived mid-morning, intending a brief appearance, but found himself staying. He watched from a corner table as Sarah handed out sample cookies, her smile genuine and unreserved for the first time since he'd met her. The penny gleamed in its display case, surrounded by Lily's carefully written story of its magic. Word spread beyond Hope Street. A local food blogger wrote about the authentic charm and exceptional pastries at Lucky Penny Bakery. Soon, suits from the financial district began appearing during lunch breaks, drawn by rumors of the best croissants in the city. Sarah added lunch service to accommodate the growing demand. The bakery's success began changing Hope Street in subtle ways. Other businesses stayed open later, benefiting from the increased foot traffic. The local coffee shop partnered with Sarah to serve her pastries. Eddie's hardware store saw more customers as people noticed his handiwork in the bakery's renovation. Michael found his worldview shifting with each visit. He watched customers linger over coffee, sharing stories and building connections. The profit margins he'd calculated seemed less important than the community taking shape around Sarah's dream. Even his brief appearances became longer, as he found himself drawn into conversations with regulars who no longer saw him as just another suit. 1 month in, Sarah presented their first financial report. The bakery wasn't just breaking even, it was thriving. But more compelling than the numbers were the photographs she'd collected: elderly neighbors teaching young staff members their family recipes, children pressing their noses against the display cases, community meetings happening over fresh bread and coffee. "We're not just selling baked goods," Sarah explained, showing Michael the photo wall she'd created. "We're preserving traditions, creating jobs, building something that matters." Her eyes shone with pride and purpose. Lily had taken to writing down people's wishes when they admired the Lucky Penny. Her notebook filled with dreams both simple and profound, a mother hoping her son would get into college, an elderly man wanting to learn to bake his late wife's chocolate cake, a teenager dreaming of opening her own business someday. The transformation wasn't lost on Michael. Each morning, before heading to his corporate office, he found himself stopping by the bakery. The simple act of watching Hope Street wake up around fresh bread and shared stories began to heal something in him he hadn't realized was broken. The success of Lucky Penny Bakery didn't go unnoticed in corporate circles. 6 weeks after opening, Richard Sterling of Silverstone Corp scheduled a meeting with his executive team. The small bakery's impact on local property values had caught their attention, particularly given Michael Anderson's involvement. "Anderson's gone soft," Sterling announced, spreading photos of the bakery across the conference table. "But he's inadvertently shown us an opportunity. That neighborhood is ripe for development, and this bakery proves it can attract upscale customers." What Sterling found particularly interesting was the connection he'd discovered. Sarah Thompson was James Thompson's widow. James Thompson, whose accident at their construction site 3 years ago had been carefully managed and buried in legal paperwork. The Lucky Penny's presence in the bakery stirred uncomfortable memories of evidence that had conveniently disappeared after the accident. Silverstone Corp began its move subtly. Real estate agents appeared on Hope Street, making offers on surrounding properties. Health inspectors, known for their connections to Sterling, conducted surprise visits to the bakery, though they found nothing to cite. Michael noticed the pattern during his morning visits. Empty storefronts were appearing more frequently, and worried whispers circulated among the remaining business owners. Mr. Chen mentioned receiving multiple offers for his corner store, each more aggressive than the last. Sarah felt the pressure too. Supply deliveries began arriving late or not at all. Their regular customers from the financial district reported being directed to newer, more upscale establishments. Anonymous complaints about parking and noise appeared in the city council's inbox. The situation crystallized one morning when Michael arrived to find Sarah in tears. Their kitchen equipment had been vandalized overnight, despite the security system he'd installed. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear: someone wanted them gone. "It's happening again," Sarah whispered, clutching a letter from their insurance company questioning their coverage, just like after James's accident. The same pattern of pressure, the same feeling of fighting something too big to see. Michael examined the damaged equipment, his mind racing. The techniques were familiar. He'd used similar tactics in his corporate dealings. But seeing them deployed against Sarah and Lily awakened something fierce and protective in him. That afternoon, Jennifer placed a thick file on his desk. Her quiet investigation had revealed the connections: Silverstone Corp's history of aggressive acquisitions, the pattern of accidents at their construction sites, and most damning, their involvement in James Thompson's death. The Lucky Penny story took on new significance. James had found it the day he started work at Silverstone's site. According to old police reports, he'd been carrying it when he died, but it hadn't been among his returned belongings. Michael stood at his office window watching the city below. He'd spent years playing the corporate game, becoming what he once fought against. Now, facing Silverstone's tactics from the other side, he recognized the true cost of such business decisions. His phone buzzed with messages from board members concerned about his continued involvement with the bakery. The corporate world was closing ranks, sensing his wavering loyalty to their unwritten rules. Standing in his luxurious office, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd never thought he'd use again, his old contact from Hope Foundation's legal team. "Nancy? It's Michael Anderson. I need your help investigating a workplace accident from 3 years ago, and we need to move fast." The investigation into James Thompson's death stirred a hornet's nest. Old files mysteriously disappeared from city records, and former Silverstone employees became suddenly unreachable. Nancy, Michael's legal contact, reported that their initial inquiries had triggered unusual activity in Silverstone's legal department. Lily noticed the tension, though everyone tried to shield her. She spent more time with her penny, making increasingly urgent wishes. "The penny feels different," she told Michael one morning, "like it's trying to tell us something." Her innocent observation struck a chord. The penny's history had become central to their investigation. Sarah threw herself into keeping the bakery running despite mounting obstacles. When their supplier suddenly cancelled their contract, she rallied the community. Mr. Chen connected her with his restaurant suppliers. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a neighborhood watch to protect the bakery at night. The community support became their strongest defense against corporate intimidation. Michael faced his own battles in the corporate world. Board members questioned his judgment in increasingly hostile terms. His major shareholders received anonymous tips about his emotional investment in a failing neighborhood. Richard Sterling began appearing at his social gatherings, dropping veiled threats disguised as concern. "The thing about luck," Michael Sterling said during a charity gala, "is that it can change so quickly. One day you're on top, the next he left the threat hanging, sipping his champagne with a predatory smile." The pressure peaked when Sarah discovered her late husband's work diary hidden in their apartment's old heating vent. The pages detailed safety violations at Silverstone's construction site and referenced photographs stored on a USB drive along with his lucky penny. The same penny that had mysteriously returned to Lily years after his death. Michael's own investigation revealed a pattern of similar accidents at Silverstone properties, all carefully buried under settlements and non-disclosure agreements. The penny wasn't just a good luck charm, it was potentially evidence of corporate manslaughter. The stakes became clear. This wasn't just about saving a bakery anymore. It was about exposing years of corporate corruption and bringing justice to families like the Thompsons. But going against Silverstone meant risking everything Michael had built. Late one night, as Michael sat in the empty bakery reviewing documents, Lily came downstairs in her pajamas. She placed the penny on the table between them. "Daddy always said the penny shows you the right path," she said solemnly, "even when it's the hard one." Michael touched the penny, feeling its worn surface. Tomorrow he would have to decide: continue playing it safe in his corporate world or risk everything to fight for what he once believed in. A text from Jennifer lit up his phone. She'd found James Thompson's former supervisor, who was willing to talk. The game was about to change. James Thompson's former supervisor, Frank Miller, met Michael in a quiet diner 50 miles outside the city. His hands shook as he stirred his coffee, eyes constantly darting to the door. 20 years of construction work had weathered his face, but fear had carved the deepest lines. "I've been carrying this for 3 years," Frank said, sliding a worn envelope across the table. Inside were photographs from the construction site, dated the week before James's death. They showed clearly documented safety violations: missing guardrails, improper scaffolding, workers without proper equipment. Most importantly, they showed James documenting everything with his phone and lucky penny visible in his shirt pocket. "James was a good man," Frank continued, his voice rough with emotion. "He kept trying to do things right, kept records of everything. Said that penny reminded him to stay honest, no matter what. The day before the accident, he told me he was going to report everything to OSHA." The photos corroborated everything in James's recovered diary. Michael laid them out alongside Sarah's timeline of events. The pattern was clear: James had been systematically documenting safety violations, using his penny in photos for scale reference. The day he died, he'd been scheduled to meet with safety inspectors. Nancy's legal team worked through nights, connecting the dots. They discovered similar patterns at other Silverstone sites: whistleblowers silenced, evidence vanishing, accidents explained away with generous settlements and ironclad NDAs. Jennifer contributed her own breakthrough financial records showing suspicious payments to safety inspectors following James's death. The paper trail led straight to Richard Sterling's office, though carefully obscured through shell companies. Sarah provided the missing piece during a late-night session at the bakery. James was always recording things on his phone, she remembered. He'd sync everything to a cloud drive every night. I still had the password, but I could never access it after he died. Michael brought in his best IT specialists. They worked through the weekend, finally breaking through layers of encrypted data. What they found was explosive. James had backed up everything. Photos, videos, voice recordings of conversations with supervisors dismissing his safety concerns. The final entry was a video message to Sarah, recorded the night before his death, with his lucky penny prominent on his desk. If anything happens to me, James's voice echoed through the bakery's empty kitchen. The truth is, in the penny, the video showed him carefully hollowing out the penny center, inserting a micro SD card, and resealing it. Lily's penny, the one that had mysteriously returned to them, suddenly took on new significance. Under careful examination, they found the nearly invisible seam. Inside was the SD card containing copies of every document James had collected. The investigation took an even darker turn when Frank Miller's background check revealed more connections. He'd worked at every Silverstone site where suspicious accidents had occurred. His promotion pattern followed the accidents, silence rewarded with advancement. "I can't live with it anymore," Frank admitted in a follow-up meeting. James was the only one who tried to stand up to them. After what they did to him, he pulled out his own collection of documents, gathered over years of guilty silence. Michael realized they'd uncovered more than just one wrongful death. They were looking at a systematic pattern of corruption that reached into city government, safety oversight boards, and the highest levels of corporate leadership. The evidence was overwhelming, but also dangerous. 3 people connected to James's case had already disappeared or changed their stories. Frank jumped at every sound, convinced he was being followed. Even Jennifer reported suspicious activity around her apartment. As Michael compiled the evidence in his office late one night, a message appeared on his screen: "Back off, Anderson." "Some luck runs out." Attached was a photo of Lily at school, taken that day. The stakes had just gotten much higher. The attack on Lucky Penny Bakery came at dawn. Sarah arrived to find the windows shattered, equipment destroyed, and walls spray-painted with threats. Most chilling was the display case for the Lucky Penny smashed open, though the penny itself remained safe in Sarah's apartment with Lily. The community rallied immediately. Eddie and his nephews boarded up the windows. Mrs. Rodriguez organized a cleanup crew. Mr. Chen provided coffee and breakfast for the volunteers. But beneath the supportive activity ran an undercurrent of fear. Everyone knew this wasn't random vandalism. The health department arrived within hours, citing anonymous complaints about unsanitary conditions. Their inspection was aggressive, clearly seeking any excuse to shut down the bakery. Sarah stood her ground, her grandmother's recipes and James's memory giving her strength. "We've done nothing wrong," she told the inspectors, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Every violation you're claiming happened after the break-in, and we have security footage to prove it." The media arrived next, drawn by rumors of trouble in the recently celebrated bakery. The story shifted rapidly from local vandalism to something darker when Sarah was suddenly arrested in front of rolling cameras. The charges seemed vague: tax irregularities, licensing violations, health code infractions. Michael watched the arrest footage in his office, his knuckles white as he gripped his desk. The timing was too perfect, the charges too convenient. Sterling's fingerprints were all over this, but proving it would be another matter. Lily was pulled from school that day, devastated and confused. Child Services arrived with concerns about her unstable home environment, citing Sarah's arrest and the bakery's troubles. Despite Mrs. Rodriguez offering to take temporary custody, Lily was placed in the system for her own protection. The separation tore at the community's heart. Lily, placed in a foster home across the city, clutched her father's penny and refused to speak. Sarah, released on bail but prohibited from contacting her daughter, threw herself into fighting the charges while trying to save her bakery. Michael's own position became increasingly precarious. his board called an emergency meeting, presenting evidence of his compromised judgment and conflicts of interest. The same health inspectors who targeted the bakery began appearing at other properties he'd supported in Hope Street. "This isn't about one bakery anymore," Jennifer warned, bringing him another stack of threatening letters. "They're trying to erase everything you've built, both worlds you're trying to bridge." The community began to fracture under the pressure. Some businesses, fearing similar targeting, distanced themselves from the bakery. Others, led by the steadfast Mr. Chen and Mrs. Rodriguez, doubled down on their support, knowing they were fighting for Hope Street's soul. Sarah's legal troubles multiplied mysteriously. Old parking tickets suddenly appeared, license renewals were questioned, and her previous employers received inquiries about her work history. The message was clear: back off, or be buried in legal proceedings. Frank Miller disappeared after leaving Michael an urgent voicemail: "They know I talked. Watch your back." There's more to this than James's death. His apartment was found empty, his documents gone. The lucky penny, now locked in Michael's office safe, seemed to weigh heavier with each passing day. What had started as a simple wish for a bakery had uncovered a web of corruption that threatened to destroy everyone involved. Hope Street refused to be silenced. The morning after Sarah's arrest, residents gathered at Lucky Penny Bakery, forming a human chain around the building. Local artists painted murals over the threatening graffiti, transforming messages of hate into symbols of resistance. The community's response became a story in itself. Mrs. Rodriguez organized daily vigils where neighbors shared stories about Sarah and James. Tales of James's kindness, Sarah's strength, and Lily's bright spirit drew media attention of a different kind. Local reporters, initially attracted by the scandal, found themselves covering a community's fight for survival. Michael's former colleagues from Hope Foundation emerged from the woodwork, offering legal aid and advocacy support. They remembered the passionate young man who'd once fought for communities like Hope Street and saw this as a chance to reignite that mission. "We protect our own," Mr. Chen declared at a community meeting, his usually quiet voice firm with conviction. He coordinated with other local business owners to maintain a constant presence at the bakery, preventing further vandalism. His security cameras mysteriously multiplied, covering every angle of the street. The neighborhood children, missing Lily's presence, began a letter-writing campaign. They sent drawings and stories to the foster care facility, reminding Lily she wasn't forgotten. When the facility returned the letters, citing contact restrictions, the children posted them on the bakery's boarded-up windows instead. Social media caught fire with the story. Save Lucky Penny and Justice for Hope Street started trending. Food bloggers who'd previously praised the bakery's pastries now wrote about its significance to the community. People began driving from other cities to show support, leaving notes and small donations. Jennifer, working beyond her official duties, coordinated with community organizers to document everything. Each act of support, each testimonial, each piece of evidence of community impact was carefully preserved. She built a narrative that went beyond business metrics, showing the human cost of corporate greed. Former Silverstone employees, inspired by the community's courage, began reaching out anonymously. They shared stories similar to James's of safety concerns ignored and whistleblowers silenced. Each account strengthened the pattern Frank had revealed before his disappearance. Sarah, despite her legal troubles, found ways to keep her grandmother's recipes alive. Unable to bake professionally while her case was pending, she taught neighborhood women in their own kitchens. The scent of fresh bread continued to waft through Hope Street, a form of quiet rebellion. Local lawyers, moved by the community spirit, offered pro bono services. They found irregularities in the charges against Sarah, evidence of rushed paperwork, and signs of coordination between agencies that should have been independent. The bakery, though closed, became a symbol of resistance. People left flowers and cards at its door. Local musicians performed on the sidewalk outside. Every attempt to demoralize the community only strengthened its resolve. Michael, watching this groundswell of support, realized he'd found something he'd lost years ago, a cause worth fighting for, a community worth protecting. The corporate world had taught him to see everything in terms of assets and liabilities, but Hope Street was teaching him about value that couldn't be quantified. The showdown at Anderson Enterprises board meeting began with an unexpected guest. Sarah Thompson walked into the boardroom, escorted by Jennifer, her head held high despite her ongoing legal battles. Michael had arranged for her presence, knowing this would be their one chance to expose everything. The board members shifted uncomfortably as Sarah placed James's lucky penny on the polished mahogany table. Richard Sterling, present as a major shareholder, stared at it with barely concealed recognition. The penny that had started everything was about to end it? "Gentlemen," Michael began, standing at the head of the table, "we're here to discuss more than quarterly profits. We're here to address corporate accountability." He nodded to Jennifer, who distributed thick folders to each board member. The folders contained everything: Frank Miller's testimony, James's recovered documents, the pattern of accidents at Silverstone sites, the coordinated attacks on Hope Street businesses, and most damaging, the financial trails linking Sterling to each incident. "This isn't just about one accident or one bakery," Michael continued. "It's about a systematic abuse of power that's destroyed lives and communities." He played James's final video message, the late construction worker's voice filling the stunned silence. Sterling attempted to interrupt, but Sarah's quiet voice cut through his objections. "My husband died protecting other workers. His lucky penny kept the truth alive." She opened the penny's secret compartment, revealing the micro SD card that had survived 3 years of cover-ups. The evidence was irrefutable. Board members paled as they reviewed years of concealed safety violations, falsified inspection reports, and buried complaints. The lucky penny had preserved not just James's evidence, but his final act of courage. Michael unveiled the masterstroke, a live video feed connecting them to journalists, regulators, and law enforcement agencies. Everything being discussed was being documented in real time. There would be no burying this story. "You've forgotten what business is supposed to be about," Michael addressed his shocked board. "It's not just profit margins and market share. It's about building something meaningful, something that lifts people up instead of crushing them." Sterling lunged for the penny, but Sarah was faster. She clutched it close, years of grief and anger finding their voice. "This penny wasn't just lucky," she declared. "It was my husband's promise to protect others. His death wasn't an accident, it was the result of choices made in rooms just like this." The boardroom erupted into chaos. Some members immediately called their lawyers. Others demanded Sterling's resignation. A few sat in stunned silence, decades of corporate maneuvering unraveling before their eyes. Through it all, the penny gleamed under the boardroom lights, its surface worn smooth by years of hopes, wishes, and now, finally, justice. The truth it had carried was spreading beyond the room, beyond Hope Street, reaching into every corner of the corporate empire built on silence and fear. The aftermath of the boardroom revelation hit like a tidal wave. Michael's personal fortune plummeted as nervous shareholders dumped Anderson Enterprises stock. His carefully cultivated business relationships evaporated overnight. Former allies suddenly couldn't recall his name, while others openly questioned his sanity. Sarah faced intensified persecution. Sterling's remaining allies in city government accelerated their harassment campaign. Health inspectors appeared daily at her shuttered bakery. Tax auditors combed through years of her personal records. Even her late husband's accident benefits came under sudden review. Lily remained isolated in foster care, despite growing public pressure for her return. The system that was supposed to protect her had become a weapon against her family. Her social worker reported that she spent hours staring at photos of the bakery, refusing to engage with her temporary guardians. Michael discovered the true meaning of corporate exile. His membership at exclusive clubs was revoked. Dinner invitations dried up. Former mentees crossed the street to avoid him. The social infrastructure he'd spent decades building crumbled in days. "You're committing professional suicide," his oldest friend on the board told him during a tense phone call. Walking away from everything for what? A bakery and some misplaced guilt. The conversation ended with another friendship in ruins. The press turned the story into a circus. Some painted Michael as a corporate traitor, others as a crusading hero. Sarah was alternatively portrayed as a grieving widow seeking justice or an opportunist exploiting tragedy. Few caught the real story, the human cost of corporate greed and the power of community resistance. Jennifer faced her own battles. Anonymous threats appeared in her email. Her apartment was broken into, though nothing was taken. Career opportunities she'd been cultivating suddenly vanished. Yet she remained steadfast, organizing evidence and coordinating with investigators. The Hope Street community felt the squeeze. Bank loans were mysteriously denied. Building inspections became more frequent and aggressive. Long-standing permits came under review. The message was clear: supporting Sarah and Michael carried a price. Mrs. Rodriguez arrived at her laundromat one morning to find her machines vandalized. Mr. Chen's suppliers began canceling deliveries without explanation. Eddie's hardware store received multiple visits from licensing authorities. The web of intimidation spread beyond its original targets. Michael watched his life's work dissolve, replaced by something he couldn't yet define. His penthouse felt empty, its luxury meaningless. He spent more time in his old office at Hope Foundation, reconnecting with the person he used to be. Sarah's strength began to crack under the separation from Lily. She lost weight, slept little, and jumped at unexpected sounds. The only thing keeping her going was the community's unwavering support and the belief that the penny's luck hadn't run out. The lucky penny itself remained in protective custody, tagged as evidence. Its absence from the bakery felt symbolic, like Hope itself had been locked away. But its impact continued to ripple through the city, awakening long-buried questions about corporate responsibility and community rights. The legal battle that ensued transformed from a simple corporate dispute into a watershed moment for corporate accountability. Michael's legal team, reinforced by pro bono attorneys drawn to the case's significance, worked around the clock. They weren't just fighting for one bakery or one community, they were challenging a system designed to protect the powerful. Media coverage intensified as more former Silverstone employees came forward. Each new testimony reinforced the pattern James had died trying to expose. Safety violations, silenced whistleblowers, and suspicious accidents painted a picture of systematic corruption. The lucky penny's evidence became the cornerstone of a much larger case. Sterling's defense crumbled under mounting pressure. His carefully constructed network of influence began to unravel as allies distanced themselves. City officials, fearing public scrutiny, suddenly discovered misfiled reports about Hope Street development plans. Health inspectors revised their findings, citing procedural errors. Public opinion shifted dramatically when an investigative reporter uncovered similar patterns at development sites across the city. Communities that had lost businesses, homes, and sometimes lives to suspicious accidents began connecting their stories to Hope Street's struggle. The battle expanded beyond one neighborhood. The courthouse became a daily battleground. Sterling's lawyers attempted to discredit each piece of evidence, but the penny's contents proved irrefutable. James's methodical documentation, combined with Frank Miller's testimony and the new whistleblowers, created an airtight case. Sarah's fight for Lily gained momentum as evidence of corruption in child services emerged. The judge overseeing her case discovered connections between Sterling's legal team and the department's sudden interest in Lily's welfare. Public outrage grew as the extent of manipulation became clear. Michael faced his own legal challenges with a newfound sense of purpose. Each attempt to discredit him only reinforced his commitment to exposing the truth. His former business associates watched in amazement as the Ice King transformed into a passionate advocate for corporate reform. The community's role proved crucial. Hope Street residents packed the courtroom daily, their presence a silent testament to what was at stake. Local businesses documented each act of intimidation, creating a record that revealed the systematic nature of corporate bullying. Jennifer's meticulous organization of evidence became invaluable. She had created a timeline linking every incident, every threat, and every suspicious coincidence. Her work revealed patterns that might have gone unnoticed, connecting seemingly unrelated events into a clear picture of corruption. Sterling made a final desperate move, offering a massive settlement to end the case quietly. The amount was staggering, enough to rebuild the bakery many times over, but attached were silence clauses that would bury the truth forever. Sarah's response became legendary in Hope Street. "My husband's life wasn't for sale then, and his truth isn't for sale now." Her words, spoken quietly in the crowded courtroom, captured headlines and hearts across the city. The battle's momentum shifted decisively when Frank Miller reappeared. Having gathered more evidence from his years inside Silverstone, he chose to testify despite the personal risk. His detailed account of corporate practices left no doubt about the systematic nature of the corruption. The betrayal came from an unexpected direction. Thomas Reynolds, Michael's longest-serving board member and mentor, orchestrated a sudden legal coup at Anderson Enterprises, using Michael's erratic behavior and emotional instability. As justification, Reynolds convinced key shareholders to force an emergency board meeting. The timing was devastating. Just as Michael prepared to present new evidence in the Silverstone case, he found himself locked out of his own company's systems. His corporate access cards deactivated, email accounts suspended, and executive privileges revoked in a matter of hours. Reynolds' public statement was carefully crafted. "While we respect Michael Anderson's humanitarian interests, his recent actions have compromised shareholder value and corporate stability. This temporary measure is necessary to protect the company's interests." The betrayal stung deeper because Reynolds had been one of the few who knew Michael from his Hope Foundation days. The impact rippled through Hope Street immediately. The bakery, which had been preparing to reopen under temporary permits, was hit with a new wave of violations. This time, the inspectors carried documentation linking the property to ongoing corporate litigation, and cited it as grounds for extended closure. Sarah arrived one morning to find the bakery completely vandalized. The destruction was methodical and thorough. Every piece of equipment destroyed, walls sledgehammered, and pipes burst, flooding the basement. Insurance adjusters arrived quickly, only to declare the damage not covered under their policy due to civil unrest exclusions. Most painful was the discovery that someone had broken into the evidence lockup, where the lucky penny was being held. Though the penny itself remained secure due to Jennifer's foresight in creating multiple safeguards, the attempt revealed how far their opponents would go to silence the truth. Lily, still in foster care, stopped eating when she heard about the bakery's destruction. Her social worker reported increasing withdrawal and depression. The system designed to protect her had become a prison, separating her from the only family and community she knew. The community watched in horror as their symbol of resistance was reduced to rubble. Mrs. Rodriguez led prayers on the sidewalk while Eddie and his nephews tried to salvage what they could from the wreckage. Mr. Chen offered his store's basement for storing what little survived. Michael, stripped of his corporate resources, faced the reality of how quickly power could evaporate. His personal accounts were frozen pending investigation of irregular activities, credit cards cancelled, properties placed under review, and legal resources suddenly constrained by lack of funds. The message was clear: the system protected its own, and those who challenged it would find themselves crushed beneath its weight. The battle had escalated from corporate manipulation to outright warfare, with Hope Street caught in the crossfire. The separation of Lily from her mother reached a critical point when the foster care system announced plans to move her to a facility in another state. The justification was clinical and cold, providing necessary distance from ongoing legal disputes affecting the child's emotional well-being. Sarah collapsed upon hearing the news, her strength finally breaking. 3 months of separation had already taken their toll, but the prospect of Lily being moved across state lines felt like losing her child forever. The bakery's destruction she could handle, but this struck at her very core. Michael found Sarah in the rubble of Lucky Penny Bakery, clutching Lily's old apron and sobbing. The strong woman who had faced down corporate giants and endured countless hardships had finally reached her breaking point. "They're taking everything, Michael," she whispered. "James, the bakery, and now Lily." The community's attempts to intervene met with bureaucratic walls. Mrs. Rodriguez's petition to become Lily's temporary guardian was denied without explanation. Legal appeals were delayed by administrative reviews. Every avenue of resistance seemed blocked by an invisible but powerful hand. Lily's last visit with her mother, supervised by stern-faced social workers, was heart-wrenching. The normally chatty child barely spoke, her eyes fixed on the Lucky Penny's empty display case in the ruined bakery. When it was time to leave, she clung to Sarah with such desperation that it took 3 people to separate them. Michael, watching from across the street, saw his own transformation reflected in Lily's tears. Like her, he had once believed in luck and justice. Like her, he had seen that belief tested by cruel reality. The difference was that Lily still held on to hope, even as it was being torn away. The separation affected the entire street. The children who used to play outside the bakery grew quiet. The daily gatherings of neighbors became subdued, heavy with the weight of collective helplessness. Hope Street, which had stood strong against corporate bullying, seemed to dim without Lily's presence. Jennifer worked tirelessly to trace the connections behind Lily's transfer orders, but the paperwork was perfect, too perfect. Every signature was in place, every form filed correctly, creating an impenetrable wall of bureaucratic propriety that masked the manipulation beneath. Sarah's hospitalization came suddenly, her body finally surrendering to months of stress and heartbreak. The doctors called it physical exhaustion combined with severe depression, but Hope Street knew better. They had watched her light dim with each passing day of separation from Lily, each new attack on her dreams. Michael spent nights pacing his modest rented room, his penthouse long since seized in the legal battles. The weight of responsibility crushed down on him, Sarah in the hospital, Lily facing interstate transfer, and the community spirit wavering. His transformation from corporate titan to community defender had cost him everything, yet somehow the price still seemed to be rising. In the hospital, Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness. Her few lucid moments were filled with memories of James, stories of Lily, and whispered recipes from her grandmother. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about post-traumatic stress and recommended long-term psychiatric care. Hope Street felt the darkness descending. The once vibrant community gathering place lay in ruins, its Lucky Penny locked away in evidence, its heart scattered across state lines. Mr. Chen stopped telling his hopeful stories, Mrs. Rodriguez's prayers grew desperate, and Eddie's tools lay unused in his shop. Jennifer, exhausted from fighting legal battles on multiple fronts, discovered that even their strongest evidence was being systematically discredited. Frank Miller's testimony was challenged by new witnesses. James's documentation was questioned by expert analysts. The truth itself seemed to be slipping away. The media began to lose interest, seduced by newer scandals and fresher stories. The narrative shifted subtly from corporate corruption to the sad tale of a grieving widow's descent into paranoid accusations. The system was winning by doing what it did best, wearing down resistance, until surrender seemed like the only option. Michael hit his lowest point sitting alone in Sarah's hospital room, watching her fight against nightmares. The mighty corporate warrior who had once commanded boardrooms now couldn't even protect one small family. The distance between his old life and his current reality felt like an unbridgeable chasm. Hope Street's darkness was complete when news arrived that Lily's transfer had been expedited. She would be moved within 48 hours, without a chance for a final visit with her hospitalized mother. The community that had stood strong against corporate giants now faced the crushing reality that sometimes the system simply won. The turning point came buried in the Lucky Penny's history. Jennifer, refusing to accept defeat, spent a sleepless night reviewing every detail of James's last days. She discovered something everyone had missed: the penny wasn't just carrying digital evidence. Its very existence told a larger story. The penny's date, 1983, matched the founding year of Silverstone Corp. Further investigation revealed James wasn't the first person to use it as a marker for safety violations. It had passed through the hands of multiple whistleblowers over decades, each adding their own layer of evidence to its digital storage. Frank Miller emerged from hiding with the missing piece records, showing the penny had originally belonged to Sterling's father, who had also died in a mysterious construction accident while attempting to expose safety violations. Sterling's crusade against the penny wasn't just about covering current crimes, it was about burying a family legacy of corruption. The evidence stored within the penny painted a devastating picture. Each previous owner had documented similar patterns: unsafe conditions, ignored warnings, suspicious accidents. The penny had been passed from worker to worker, each adding their testimony to its hidden memory, creating a decades-long chronicle of corporate negligence. Jennifer pieced together a timeline that was impossible to ignore. Every major Silverstone development project had its own tragedy, its own silenced whistleblower. The penny had traveled through each site, collecting evidence, until it reached James Thompson, who had unknowingly completed the circuit by documenting the same violations that had killed Sterling's father. Michael presented the evidence to his old contact at the Justice Department. The scope of the conspiracy extended beyond anything they had imagined. But Sterling hadn't just covered up individual accidents, he had inherited and expanded a system of corruption that had claimed dozens of lives over 30 years. The penny's journey revealed a network of corporate corruption that touched every level of city government. Building inspectors, safety regulators, and city officials had been compromised for decades. Each piece of evidence stored in the penny connected to another revelation, another cover-up, another silenced voice. When the full story broke, it shattered the corporate world's complacency. The penny hadn't just been a good luck charm or a piece of evidence, it had been a silent witness to generations of workers trying to protect their colleagues, each adding their testimony to a 30-year fight for justice. The vindication came like an avalanche. Within hours of the evidence going public, Sterling's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Board members rushed to distance themselves, regulators launched investigations, and long-silent witnesses suddenly found their voices. Sarah's name was cleared spectacularly. The fabricated charges against her dissolved under public scrutiny. The judge who had separated her from Lily issued a rare public apology, acknowledging that the court had been manipulated by corporate interests. The health department retracted every citation against Lucky Penny Bakery, their own internal investigation revealing direct pressure from Silverstone Corp. But Sterling's arrest played out on national television. The man who had terrorized Hope Street was led from his office in handcuffs, his corporate armor finally shattered. His desperate attempt to shift blame only revealed more connections, more corruption, more lives affected by decades of corporate greed. Frank Miller's testimony, combined with the penny's evidence, triggered a cascade of revelations. Safety inspectors confessed to years of falsified reports. City officials admitted to buried complaints. Former Silverstone executives came forward with their own stories of coercion and cover-ups. But Michael's reputation transformed overnight. The corporate traitor became a whistleblower hero. His former board members, including Thomas Reynolds, faced their own investigations for attempting to suppress evidence. Anderson Enterprises shareholders called for his reinstatement, acknowledging that his erratic behavior had actually been moral courage. The system that had seemed so impenetrable just days before now revealed its fragility. Each new revelation strengthened the community's faith in justice. Hope Street residents watched as their small fight for one bakery expanded into a landmark case for corporate accountability. The Lucky Penny's journey from worker to worker, carrying its burden of truth through decades of silence, became a symbol of resistance against corporate corruption. Museums requested to display it. Universities asked to study its contents. But its true power lay in what it represented: the courage of ordinary people standing up for what was right. Sarah, recovering in the hospital, watched the news of Sterling's arrest with quiet satisfaction. The penny's luck hadn't just been about good fortune, it had been about persistence, about truth finding its way to light, about justice finally breaking through walls of corporate power. Lily's return to Hope Street became a community celebration. She ran from the social services car straight into Sarah's arms, their reunion witnessed by neighbors who had fought alongside them. The lucky penny, finally released from evidence, was clutched tightly in her small hand, its surface warm with 3 generations of hope. Sarah and Lily's first night back in their apartment above the ruined bakery was filled with tears and laughter. The community gathered below their window, singing softly, their presence a gentle reminder that some bonds couldn't be broken by corporate power. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her special empanadas, Mr. Chen contributed his famous dumplings, and Eddie's family set up impromptu tables in the street. Michael watched the reunion from the bakery's doorway, seeing in their embrace everything he had forgotten during his years in corporate towers. The transformation of his own life seemed complete, from the ice king of real estate to a defender of community values. The cost had been enormous, but the reward was measured in moments like this. Jennifer joined the celebration, bringing news that would make the reunion even sweeter. The city council, under intense public pressure, had approved an emergency grant for rebuilding Lucky Penny Bakery. Moreover, several of Michael's former business associates, seeking to rehabilitate their own images, had offered to contribute to a community development fund. The penny found its way back to the bakery's counter, but not in its old display case. Instead, Sarah and Lily created a small museum corner, documenting its journey from James's pocket through years of corporate corruption to final vindication. Each visitor would learn not just about luck, but about courage, persistence, and the power of community. Michael's own reunion with his true self was quieter but no less profound. The skills he had honed in corporate battles found new purpose in community advocacy. His understanding of business became a tool for protecting other neighborhoods from corporate predation. The Ice King had melted, revealing the idealistic young man who had once worked at Hope Foundation. The evening ended with Lily leading everyone in a wish-making ceremony, the penny passing from hand to hand. Each person added their hopes to its legacy, not just for luck, but for continued strength, unity, and justice. The penny had become more than evidence or a good luck charm. It was now a symbol of Hope Street's resilient spirit. Lucky Penny Bakery's grand reopening transformed Hope Street. The rebuilt storefront gleamed, but it wasn't just a bakery anymore, it had become a symbol of community triumph over corporate greed. Sarah and Lily stood behind a counter that now stretched twice the original length, serving not just pastries, but hope to a neighborhood that had fought alongside them. The legal resolution exceeded everyone's expectations. Sterling's conviction led to a complete restructuring of corporate oversight in the city. The settlement money, combined with contributions from reformed business leaders, established the Hope Street Community Development Trust, with Michael and Sarah as founding trustees. The fund's first action was purchasing several threatened properties to protect them from predatory development. But James's legacy expanded beyond the Lucky Penny's evidence. The City Council passed the Thompson Safety Act, requiring unprecedented transparency in construction projects and establishing protections for whistleblowers. Every construction site now required a worker-elected safety representative, with direct reporting lines to independent oversight committees. The bakery's success inspired a wave of community entrepreneurship. With support from the Trust Fund, other Hope Street residents launched their own businesses. Mr. Chen expanded his store into a cultural market. Mrs. Rodriguez transformed her laundromat into a community center with attached cleaning services. Eddie's hardware store became a training facility for young craftspeople. Sarah's business model evolved to embrace the community's spirit. Local youth received bakery apprenticeships, learning not just baking but business management. The kitchen that had once been her solitary refuge now hummed with activity as community members shared traditional recipes from various cultures. The national media attention brought unexpected opportunities. Other communities facing similar struggles reached out for guidance. Michael and Sarah found themselves traveling to speak about corporate accountability and community organizing. The Lucky Penny's story became a case study in business ethics courses. Lily flourished in the renewed environment. Her corner of the bakery, dubbed Lily's Wish Station, became famous for its practice of asking customers to make a wish for someone else's happiness. She kept her father's penny in a special display, but now it was surrounded by hundreds of other pennies, each representing a wish granted or a dream supported by the community. The corporate world watched and adapted. Several major companies, seeing the positive public response to Hope Street's transformation, established their own community engagement programs. Michael's example inspired a new generation of business leaders to consider social impact alongside profit margins. Michael's personal transformation became as remarkable as Hope Street's revival. He moved into a modest apartment above Eddie's hardware store, trading his penthouse view for the sound of community life below. His corporate expertise found new purpose in mentoring small business owners, teaching them to protect themselves while maintaining their integrity. Sarah evolved from a grieving widow into a powerful community leader. Her kitchen became a classroom where she taught more than baking. She shared lessons about resilience, community building, and standing up to intimidation. The recipes passed down from her grandmother now passed to a new generation, each carrying stories of survival and triumph. Lily grew into her role as Hope Street's heart. Now attending the local school again, she started a student program called Penny Wishes, teaching other children about community service and the importance of standing up for what's right. Her father's story, once a tragedy, became an inspiration for young activists. The bakery's transformation reflected the neighborhood's evolution. Beyond serving food, it became a community hub where business plans were discussed, local issues debated, and celebrations held. The walls, once marred by threatening graffiti, now displayed community artwork and photographs documenting Hope Street's victory. Jennifer surprised everyone by leaving her corporate career to become the trust's full-time administrator. Her organizational skills, once used to navigate corporate politics, now help streamline community initiatives and protect local businesses from predatory practices. She found fulfillment in using her talents for genuine community benefit. The community's character strengthened rather than gentrified. New businesses opened under the trust's guidance, but they enhanced rather than replaced the neighborhood's culture. Property values rose, but long-term residents were protected by innovative housing programs Michael helped design. Most significantly, the spirit of solidarity that had emerged during the struggle became permanent. Weekly community meetings in the bakery continued, now focused on proactive planning rather than defensive strategies. The networks of mutual support that had formed under pressure became the foundation of a new way of living. Even Michael's former corporate adversaries underwent transformation. Several, seeing the positive changes in Hope Street, reached out to learn about responsible community development. The story of the Lucky Penny became a case study in how business could profit while enriching communities rather than exploiting them. Hope Street's transformation became a blueprint for community resistance and revival across the city. The Lucky Penny's display case, now a permanent installation in Lucky Penny Bakery, drew visitors from around the world who came to learn about the power of community solidarity against corporate greed. 10 years after the confrontation, Hope Street had become a case study in sustainable community development. Local businesses thrived without displacing long-time residents. The Thompson Safety Act's protections had spread to other cities, saving countless lives. The street's success proved that prosperity didn't require sacrificing community values. Lily, now a teenager, started giving tours of Hope Street, telling visitors the story of her father's penny and the community that refused to be broken. Each tour ended at the bakery, where the original penny still held pride of place, surrounded by thousands of wishes written on small cards by visitors from around the world. Sarah expanded Lucky Penny Bakery into a network of community-owned cafes, each operating on the principles that had saved Hope Street. Every location displayed a replica of the Lucky Penny, along with the story of James Thompson and the community that fought for justice. The bakeries became gathering places for other neighborhoods facing similar struggles. Michael's legacy transcended his corporate past. The Hope Street Community Development Trust became a model for ethical urban development, proving that communities could grow stronger without losing their soul. He never returned to corporate life, finding greater satisfaction in teaching others how to protect their neighborhoods. The penny story found its way into business school curricula, not just as a case study in corporate accountability, but as a lesson in the true meaning of value. Students learned that success could be measured in more than profit margins. It could be counted in lives improved, communities strengthened, and justice served. Every year on the anniversary of the bakery's reopening, Hope Street held a celebration called Penny Day. People shared stories of wishes granted, dreams achieved, and battles won. The tradition of making wishes on pennies continued, but now each wish was accompanied by a commitment to help someone else's dream come true. The final testament to Hope Street's legacy was written not in legal documents or business records, but in the daily life of the community. Children played safely in streets, watched over by neighbors who knew their names. Local businesses supported each other through hard times. The spirit of solidarity that had saved the bakery became the foundation of a thriving community. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey through Hope Street. If this story of resilience, community strength, and triumph over corporate greed has touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. What moments resonated with you most? Did you find yourself connecting with Michael's transformation or Sarah's unwavering determination? Your support through subscribing, liking, and sharing this story helps us continue creating meaningful content that celebrates the power of human spirit and community bonds. Together, let's spread these stories of hope and courage to inspire others who might be fighting similar battles.